Africa and its reliance on Russia have increased. Now, Putin recently commented that they will prioritize their ties with Africa. This statement can come as a shock to people. Why would Russia be interested in Africa? And how is Africa reliant on Russia? To answer all these questions, today we will be discussing the relationship between Russia and Africa, dating back to the Soviet era. Then, on why Russia wants to improve its relationship with Africa, and discussing how and why Africa is reliant on Russia. Finally, on the future possibilities. But before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. The relationship between Russia and Africa has gone through changes over the years, influenced by politics, economics, and strategic factors. Back in the Cold War era, the Soviet Union, which Russia succeeded, played a significant role in Africa. They supported national liberation movements and socialist governments, helping them in their fights against colonialism and imperialism. But after the Cold War ended and the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, the involvement of Russia in Africa decreased for a while. It's because they were dealing with their own challenges. But in recent times, Russia is making efforts to build a relationship with Africa. As Putin mentioned, that Russia is going to prioritize their relationship with Russia. And on the political front, Russia has been actively engaging with African nations through diplomatic visits, bilateral agreements, and participation in regional forums. But there have been certain points of contention too. For example, the groundbreaking deal of a $100 billion nuclear power plant fell through in 2014. President Vladimir Putin himself has made several trips to Africa, and African leaders have visited Russia too. These interactions have played a role in strengthening political bonds and promoting cooperation in areas of mutual interest. While we are at it, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Economically, Russia has been looking for opportunities in Africa, particularly in energy, mining, infrastructure development, and agriculture. Russian companies have invested in projects involving natural resource extraction, such as oil and gas exploration, mining operations, and nuclear energy. Additionally, Russia has provided military equipment and technology to certain African countries. In terms of military and security cooperation, Russia has been expanding its involvement with African nations. They have offered arms sales, training, and military advisory services. Defense cooperation agreements have been signed with several African countries, and joint military exercises have been conducted. These efforts aim to strengthen Russia's influence in the region and counter the presence of other global powers. But there have been criticism on this too. Analysts often say that Russia is forcing its way in Africa. Now, there is one question that should emerge in your mind: why is Russia interested? If we take the relationship into account, Russia is way more influential, but we have got the answer. Well, Russia's interest in Africa is driven by a variety of factors. One key reason is the continent's vast reserves of natural resources. Africa is a treasure trove of valuable commodities like oil, gas, minerals, and metals. As a major producer of oil and gas itself, Russia is eager to tap into Africa's resource wealth and ensure a stable supply for its own needs. Another factor is the geopolitical significance of Africa. Situated at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, Africa holds strategic importance for Russia. It's actually very interesting to see how Russia is playing this game. We will discuss the future possibilities too, but one thing is for sure: Africa is definitely a critical spot for their moves. Moscow does realize that Africa has tons of potential, so they're making calculated moves to strengthen their presence to get to their strategic interests. It's quite a fascinating strategy they have going on, don't you think? And how can we forget one of the most important points: ideology? Russia finds common ground with some African countries that have authoritarian political systems. It's interesting how these countries view Russia as a natural ally and value its support for their own regimes. They seem to appreciate the fact that Russia is willing to work with them, even if they don't necessarily adhere to democratic norms. It's like political ideologies sometimes take a back seat when it comes to international relations. In this case, Russia doesn't seem to mind teaming up with nations that have different systems of governance. It's a reminder that in the world of politics, some unexpected alliances can form, and the pursuit of common interests can sometimes outweigh ideological differences. It's a fascinating dynamic, isn't it? The Soviet Union also provided huge economic and military aid to many African countries during the Cold War. This legacy of partnership has fostered a sense of goodwill towards Russia that still resonates in Africa today. We can't really take a bet on the future, but Africa will likely continue to view Russia as a valuable partner, particularly in areas like security cooperation and trade. After all, when it comes to forging relationships in the global arena, Africa remains an enticing chessboard for Russia to make its strategic moves. Now, why does Africa want to be a Russian ally? You know, Africa's reliance on Russia can be understood through a few key factors. One big reason is the economic interests involved. Russia has been investing in African countries in various sectors like energy, mining, infrastructure, and agriculture. Think about it. When Russia brings in investments and expertise in these areas, African countries see it as a great opportunity for economic growth and development. It's like having a partner who can help them tap into their resources, build better infrastructure, and improve farming practices. That's definitely something African nations welcome. Another aspect is military cooperation. Russia has been lending a helping hand by providing military equipment, training, and advisory services to some African countries. Now, why would they do that? Well, these countries have their own security challenges, and working with Russia allows them to strengthen their military capabilities. They can learn from Russian expertise, acquire advanced weaponry, and better protect their borders. It's like having a trusted ally in their corner when it comes to defense matters. And let's not forget about the diplomatic support Russia offers. Being a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council gives Russia significant clout in global politics. So, when African nations seek Russia's support on issues like conflicts or international negotiations, it can make a big difference. With Russia backing them up, African countries can better advocate for their own interests and navigate the complex world of international diplomacy, and in return, Africa extends its support too. Another critical aspect is trade. Russia exported $14 billion worth of goods and services and imported roughly $5 billion in African products. So, Africa knows that it's beneficial for them to be good friends with the big fish in the tank. Of course, it's important to remember that not all African countries rely on Russia to the same extent. Every nation has its own unique circumstances and priorities, shaping its individual relationships with Russia or other countries. But we can see from the recent take on African countries during the war on Ukraine and how the African countries backed up Russia. All in all, Africa's reliance on Russia boils down to economic interests, military cooperation, and diplomatic support. Russian investments, military assistance, and diplomatic influence are seen as valuable assets by African nations. They view these partnerships as opportunities for economic development, security enhancement, and effective representation on the global stage. Before we proceed, do take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. One cannot say whether Africa will remain reliant on Russia in the future. However, it's also possible that Africa will continue to see Russia as a valuable partner, especially in areas like security and trade, because Russia has helped Africa in many ways, even if some critics don't agree. Here are a few scenarios that can play out. Well, the obvious one is that Africa becomes more reliant on Russia. This could occur if Russia offers Africa attractive economic and security deals. For instance, Russia might extend military assistance to those facing internal or external threats. If such enticing opportunities arise, Africa might find itself increasingly drawn to deepen its reliance on Russia, because we know that the Russian military is far more powerful than Africa. Well, here's the thing. Africa's reliance on Russia could go in a couple of different directions. On one hand, Africa might become less dependent on Russia if it manages to diversify its economic and security partnerships. It could choose to increase trade with China or the United States, or seek security assistance from the United Nations or the African Union. By broadening its alliances, Africa could reduce its dependence on any single country, including Russia. You know, when it comes to Africa's reliance on Russia, the future is uncertain and will be influenced by a variety of factors. One crucial factor is the outcome of the war in Ukraine. Whatever happens, there will undoubtedly have a significant impact on Africa's relationship with Russia. Additionally, global economic situations can't be ignored. The political dynamics within Africa itself will also play a crucial role in shaping its dependence on Russia. The way things unfold on the continent, like changes in leadership, political alliances, or even conflicts, can have a direct impact on Africa's relationship with Russia. It's a complex web of factors that will ultimately determine how Africa's reliance on Russia evolves in the future. But one thing is certain: Russia is a major player on the African continent, and its relationship with Africa is likely to remain important in the years to come. We can't predict the future with absolute certainty, but it's safe to say that these two entities will continue to be strong allies. Let us know what you think of this video. We would love to see more opinions on this topic. Before going, make sure you hit that subscribe button